Hey, I'm Jay. Welcome to my booth. Today we're talking all things yelling in voiceover, animation, audiobooks, wherever it may show up in performance for you. First, we're going to talk about the physical apparatus, how to make sure you're screaming and yelling safely, that you can do it for a relatively sustained period of time, and that you sound pretty darn good doing it, or at least all right. And then I'll shift gears a bit and talk about some of the technical things that you can do to help yourself out as you're performing these yells and screams in your booth. Before we dive in, this was a question from several of y'all. So if you have a question like this or something else, please do not be shy. I love talking to specific questions from actual human beings instead of just dancing around talking to myself. I love it. And then, of course, if you like this stuff and you find it helpful, firstly, thanks for being here. And if you want to support further, you can click the buttons down there. And a big thanks to our booth buddies whose ranks ever grow. The booth buddies, incidentally, I don't know if I mentioned this, named after my cat. She was the original booth buddy. She comes in every now and again. Anyway, seemed like a fitting name. But if you want to check that out and you're feeling particularly generous, that's all down there. Okay, so first, yelling, the physical process of it. There are a few things that are helpful to bear in mind when performing yells or shouts in any sort of performance setting. The first is flow. I'll talk about what all these mean in a moment, but flow, support, no pain or discomfort, and then this is sort of a mental trick, over the top rather than scooping up into. Over the top rather than scooping up into. So let's start with flow. Flow simply means, as with all speech, there is air moving freely and without any sort of tension or obstruction from your lungs and out of your body. So points where tension can show up, any sort of musculature in your neck, in your head, in your jaw, or your voice box specifically, tension there can lead incrementally or immediately to injury or harm in a scream or any sort of major exertion of the voice. So the way the mechanism of the voice works, all of these things are somewhat helpful to think about. The lungs allow air to move in and out of your body. And as you breathe, there's no tension, no obstruction. It's just easily flowing in and out. And the vocal cords work by vibrating either under a little bit of tension or somewhat relaxed, and that's how we get different tones or frequencies for our voice. If I pull those a little bit tighter, then my vocal quality rises and I have a higher pitched voice because my vocal cords, as the air flows by them, are vibrating at a higher frequency. And then if I relax my vocal cords a little bit, my vocal cords vibrate at a lower frequency. And I'm doing this because this is what they kind of look like in your throat. If you look up videos, it's a little gross at first, but it's pretty cool to check out. So look at those if you're interested. And the big thing with yells is if there's tension or friction, forced air past your vocal cords, or you're pulling them exceptionally taut, and all of that can come from different areas of muscular tension, from basically here up, or by really forcing air out of your chest. If there's some sort of interrupted flow, that can lead to injury. So you want to make sure that the flow is nice and easy. This is where working with a voice or speech coach can be really, really helpful. Then support. Support works in conjunction with flow, but it just means that you have enough air to do the yells properly. You don't want to be forcing out dead air because that's, I'm instinctively doing this because it requires tension or pushing. And you want to reduce those as much as you possibly can when you're doing an exertion of the voice. So the way I like to think about support, any inhalation, anytime you draw air into your body, usually that comes in conjunction with an idea or some sort of stimulus from the world. I see something, and I respond to it. You see my body responding and drawing in air in relation to the thing that I see. So in terms of a yell, yells, screams, shouts, those in human experience tend to coincide with a pretty large stimulus, a large thing happening to me from the world that I'm responding to. So, for example, if I'm in a scene with another character and they upset me, I register the thing that upsets me, and I take in a big breath to respond accordingly. It's equal and opposite reaction, and I need the energy drawn in from that thing, and then I can go louder at that person. And similarly with a shout or a scream, if I'm injured or wounded in a scene, say, the register of that pain causes the air to come in, and then I have the support ready to then make the yells. This is where the over the top rather than up and into can become helpful in aligning everything. I picked this up from singing, so you'll see folks around the internet using this sort of motion to sing notes. Usually it's a person having trouble hitting a higher note in their register, and they just don't have something's not lining up. This can fix it a lot in a lot of instances for folks. And so thinking like this for yells and shouts can be really, really helpful in making sure that everything's aligned and that the flow is good and you're supporting it properly. Ha versus ha, ha, ha. It's somewhat reductive there, but it's pretty illustrative of the point. And then, of course, no pain or discomfort. This is a hard rule for me personally, and it should probably be for you as well. If you're in a session and you start to experience discomfort or pain, that is a red flag. Or if you're practicing, you start to experience pain or discomfort, red flag. It is a sign from your body saying something is not working properly. Maybe I've got too much tension on my vocal cords. Maybe I'm forcing air through. Something's not working the way it's supposed to, and it's hurting me. You do not want to push through that. You do not want to grin and bear it, even if you are in a session. If you're in, take it from me, I was in a session. I was like, I can push through. I can do this when I shouldn't have. I blew my voice out for about 2 weeks, and this was at the very early in my career, and it was very, very stressful. Can't work, can't do jobs, and you don't know if your voice is permanently damaged. You don't want to go there. Take it from me. If you experience pain, pause, communicate that to people. Again, even if you're in a session, nobody wants you to hurt yourself. You can either take a break, reevaluate, or you can pick up the next day. Additionally, if you're in a session and people want you to start yelling right at the top of it, and you know that you have a bunch of dialogue or lines to cover, for example, video game recording sessions are typically 4 hours by union standards. That's a long time to be recording straight. And if you're doing screams at the beginning of that or screams for all 4 hours, that's really, really exhausting and straining on your voice, even if you have proper form. So people who do like monster voices, the like shit like that, then they usually or can, if it's really strenuous, those sessions will be bumped down to 2 hours just to make sure that your voice is kept safe. If you're in a session like that and they have you screaming at the top of it, ask, this is totally within your rights, hey, can we move the screams and shouts and all of the exerts towards the end of the session just so I can save my voice for all the lines? And they'll usually, if they haven't already structured things that way, be totally game to do that. So do not push through pain. Do not grin and bear it. It's not a place you want to go. All right, so now we'll do just a few different types of yells. I'm going to have to do some technical wizardry behind the scenes that I'll talk about after the yells. So just be patient there. But we'll start off by doing one where I'm in a scene. Someone said something that's made me mad or upset, and I'll throw in some really choice, well-written dialogue to help me demonstrate that. Then we'll do a wound where I've been hit or set on fire or something like that. And then we'll do a few exerts at the end. Exerts are things like swinging an axe, climbing a ledge, stuff like that. And just a quick note, everybody. Watch your ears if you're wearing headphones. You might want to have your hand on the volume dial. Brace yourself. Giving you a second. All right, let's. You ready? Let's give it a shot. Get ready for some impeccable acting. That really upset me! I am so mad! Ah! 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 Boy, oh boy, watching yourself do all that. You look cool, baby. All right, let's talk about some of the technical stuff now. One important difference to note between those beautiful, Oscar-worthy performed screams and yells that I just did for you guys, and say an audiobook is there's a bit of a genre difference. Those screams that I just did are more so in the camp of I'm in a movie, I'm in a video game, and I have to represent these as true to life as possible. Audiobooks are kind of in a different category where they are a retelling oftentimes of a story. So just in terms of the way that the medium is presented, you're not obligated to do the full-bore yell. And beyond that, in audiobooks, because the sessions, if you're recording in an audiobook session, those can be 6 to 8 hours over the course of a day, which is already really taxing on your voice, generally speaking. Adding yelling into that full bore is just not generally done. So usually in audiobooks, as an example, one I just recorded, the character literally describes the action movie kneeling in the rain, no scream that happens in every movie when some tremendous loss has befallen our hero and it sets them off on a path of revenge or something like that. Instead of doing a full bore kneeling in the rain, Oscar Beatty, no, I will more so suggest something like that, either by no, something along those lines, or if in a scene of dialogue someone upsets me and I say I'm upset, hey, do the dishes. I'm upset. I'll suggest the yell with an intensity of the voice rather than an actual yell in specifically audiobooks. And then sometimes in an audiobook you can increase your language and go, this is really upsetting to me. And, use the techniques that we'll discuss now as we move into the technical stuff to make sure that you're getting good quality audio going in. The first is somewhat of a analog approach. You can just move away from the microphone as you get louder. That is, you've seen singers do this as they belt. They pull the microphone away, and that helps to maintain the same gain level as they get louder. So that's one way to do it. The downside to that is as you get louder and move away, you start to introduce a little bit more room tone because there's more difference from distance from you to your microphone. So sometimes that's not ideal. In which case, you can ride the gain. This is where, essentially on your audio interface, you have your hand on the gain knob. This is the UAD console window, and this little knob right here is my gain knob. And if I turn this down as I get louder, you see that my levels remain roughly the same, but I'm allowed to get louder and keep a healthy recording level. So you can ride the gain actively as you're yelling and just sort of get used to jockeying it back and forth organically and then fine-tune things later in post. Or if you know that this is going to be a yelling moment, you can set your level based off of where the yell is going to be to where you want it. So I'm going to aim to set my yells at, say, -9. And if this is the yell that I have to do, I'm not peaking when I yell at this moment. So this will have the level set here for now. And then I can record all of my yells at this level and then bump it back up when I go back to normal dialogue. Or you can just set your levels for the loudest moment that you're going to have, record everything at that level, and then fix everything else in post. The downside to that last option is you may end up, if you're not in an ideally treated space, you may end up having a little bit more room tone at the end of the time because you have to boost it so much on the quieter parts. So again, 3 options. You can ride the gain as you get louder. you can set your level quieter and just do all the yelling at this level. Move it back to a normal setting for when you go back to dialogue, or just set your gain to the yelling level and do everything there and then bump everything else up. If you want to use like a channel strip option, UAD has a bunch of plugins, Universal Audio, and you can just apply some light compression here. So sometimes if I'm doing a project where I know there's going to be moderate volume increases, so say for an audiobook, if one character is going to speak louder than the others, and I don't want to have to constantly be keeping an eye on the gain, I'll either use one of those 3 gain options that I mentioned before, or just use really, really light compression to catch or reduce the moments where my characters get louder. So if this is my character speaking, "Hey, Jim, did you want to go down to the store?" "Yeah, sure, let's go down to the store and get that milk over there." As that character speaks louder, my compressor helps to keep everything more level. One danger of this is that sometimes you can overcompress, and that sort of jockeying back and forth of an overcompressed sound versus not can be troublesome down the line. So this I would use very, very sparingly and only in certain instances. Lastly, you can do all of those things or a mixture of those things and then just fix it in one of your recording sessions using moderate compression. And if you want to know how to do that, I have other videos. One is multiple compressors, and the other is how to use compressors in VO. And using a combination of those things can help across an entire audio file, or you can just adjust peaks manually, either turning volume down to be more level, or conversely turning the gain up on quieter sections to even everything out a bit. Whatever you want to do. And honestly, I wish that there was an easier way to manage it, but it's one of those things that you just kind of have to deal with as you go. And those are the only sort of ways technically that I know of, at least, to handle things. Though there is one more that's a little bit more expensive than the others. If you've got the cash flow for it and the resources, you can have 2 microphones in your booth. One set for the yells, one set for the dialogue, and comp the 2 together. That's a little bit of extra work, but some professional studios will use that kind of thing. And for me, honestly, because I'm working by myself most of the time, that's more trouble than it's worth to set up. Plus, my booth is pretty small for a couple mics to be hanging right in front of me. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you. And if you have any other questions like this, please do not be shy once again. And until the next one, be well, everybody, and I'll see you there. Toodles.